and
be licensed to practice as a non-Indian in India,
be licensed.
which I regard as an achievement.
So, due to the grace of Satya Moses, we met Dr. Robert when Satya was 4 months old.
4 or 2?
2.5.
2.5.
So, thanks Satya and Natasha are packing up, they're going to Rishikesh. And little Marathi, French,
Small numbers.
English.
yes, that was the first one.
Actually, do fairly well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well done.
Shri Ganeshaya Bhakti Mahakaya Sukoti Samatprabha Nirvignam Gurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvadam Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Janata Janata Vapi Balipujan Tathakutam Pratyajyamyam Prityamniyamam Yathaktam Om Ring Namah Shivaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Triambakaya Jamane Sikandim Prashivardhanam Urvarukavivavannan Murdur Mukshiyamam Pratatu Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatrupatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Good morning, Suprabhata. I understand that yesterday was the question of what is Dharma and what is Karma. Did that question arise? Was that question answered to your satisfaction? Anybody satisfied? I happen to be looking at you. I'm sorry, I will look at the AC. In fact, can I get some fan-like action where I am? Thank you. Is everybody clear on that now?
What do you give another?
So, obviously, I'm going to give you my opinion on the subject. And my opinion has the, I believe, virtue of having been inspired by the traditions that I have been privileged to study in. And the place to begin, I think, is in the astrology. If you look at a horoscope, particularly, I find it easier to look at a North Indian horoscope. It looks like a bunch of triangles with a big diamond in the middle that is composed of 4 diamonds inside. Those 4 diamonds on the inside are called the Kendra houses. Kendra is a loan word into Sanskrit. It comes from the whatever the Greek word is that means center. Kendra, center. So those are the central houses, the Kendra houses, and those are the houses of action, of karma. They're going to indicate the actions that you perform in the world while you're alive. That's what your horoscope, your birth chart is all about. What kind of karmas you have brought into this lifetime? Because there is nothing in the world except the law of karma. It is said that somebody, I have heard Gandhiji being blamed, but it's said that someone said that after the law of karma was created, God was able to retire. Because the law of karma is totally and utterly and absolutely automatic. You can, if you're really clever, manipulate it, but it's automatic because it is built into the fabric of space-time. It's built into the fabric of Akash. So space is the reason why everything does not happen to everybody, and time is the reason why everything does not happen to you all at once. That's why we have space and time. And the reason we have space and time is so that all of the karmas that you have performed, and what is a karma? Any action that you perform when you identify yourself as the doer of that action. So anytime you identify yourself, I am picking up this cup of water. Now you will think, well, I cannot identify with that. This hand is picking, well, who's the hand belong to? And we're not talking about your conscious mind. We're talking about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind being the part of you that is working at the level of the Karan Sharira. And the Karan Sharira means the place where all of your karmas are located. So you've been performing karmas, and when we say you, we don't mean you, because you are the only you that is ever going to be. Because by the next time that however you believe yourself to be configured, and the majority of Hindus believe that there is an individual that continues to incarnate from body to body, and the majority of Buddhists believe that there's not an individual, but in fact it's just a pattern of karmas that reconfigures itself. And the answer is that both of these things are true. There is often an organized entity that will, for some period of time, be able to maintain a concept of itself so that can proceed from one lifetime to the next. And sometimes that happens because a person may be extremely focused on what they're doing, or sometimes it may happen because of being very focused at a particular moment when you die, or there's all kinds of possibilities. Really, any kind of possibility you can think of is a possibility that can be manifested. So, however you think about it, there are karmas being performed, and don't think that trees are not performing karma, because the tree, when it's alive, has a concept of itself as being different from the rest of the environment. It is thinking of itself as, this is who I am now. It doesn't have a very well developed sense of self, because it is a tree. Some trees have a not very developed sense at all, like the aspen or the poplar. In fact, one of the largest organisms in the world is an aspen that covers I don't know how many acres. But it's not one trunk. It's thousands of different trunks, but that belong to the same organism. So that individual organism has a better sense of itself than the individual trunk of each tree. Whereas an oak tree, generally they have a better kind of individuality that is limited to itself as an individual tree. And this applies to other species. I mean, there's social insects, and people like to think, oh, the queen is in charge of everything. The queen is not really in charge of everything. But all of the other insects are behaving as if the queen was in charge of everything, which is why the thing is able to work. And it's all chemical. So we as human beings have proceeded a little farther. We've been able to abstract things. Speech is an abstraction. Culture is an abstraction. These are all abstractions. And you would think, oh, and there is, however, nothing good that doesn't have a downside to it. So all of the abstraction has also created negativity in the abstraction world, which we are headed for a giant calamity in regards of. Hopefully this will happen after I'm dead, because then I won't have to see it. But I digress. So all of the karmas that you've been performing, first as a stromalite, and then as a trilobite, and then as an ammonite, and then as a whatever. All of these karmas have collected together, and they have collected together in something called the Karana Sharira, which is, Sharira means a body. Sharira literally means that which deteriorates. So your body is that which deteriorates. Congratulations. So the Karan Sharira, though, is not a body like you and I think about it, like a physical body or even a subtle body that some people can project in various directions. It's just an accumulation in the fabric of space-time of all the karmas that you have identified yourself as performing. And it's like a giant grove of mango trees. And the mango trees have a bunch of mangoes. And some are good-looking mangoes, some are misshapen mangoes, some have been eaten by insects. But all of them are maturing at their own pace. And at any particular moment, to all of that giant grove of your karmic mango trees, that's called your sanchita karma. Sanchita means collected together, your collective karma, all the karmas that you perform, there they are in a giant heap. So, at any one moment, if it so happens that you are ready, you as an assemblage who is either an individual or not an individual, but in any event has identified with these karmas and therefore you're responsible for them. At any one moment, all of the karmas that are ready for you to experience, they come together, and that's called the prarabdha karma. And that prarabdha karma determines where you're born, when you were born, how you were born, etc., and what's going to happen to you in general. So, the prarabdha karma is what you are reading when you are reading a horoscope. If you are a sensible person, at least from the perspective of Indian astrology, whenever you look at someone's birth chart, you always look at the birth chart at the moment that you also look at a chart of what's happening at the moment. And you do that because you now have a snapshot of what is the condition of that person's karmas at that moment, because they've been performing karmas ever since they were born. So the first probably being to take a breath. The second being to start to scream. And then it goes on. So you have this map of how things were at the beginning, and you have the map of when the person is approaching you, and then you have an idea of how the karmas have changed or not changed. And how will they change or not change? They will change according to whether they are dhrida, or they are dhrida, or whether they may be dhrida. Dhrida karma means fixed. This is dhrida, solid, immobile. These are the karmas that you predict on, if you were going to predict. And in Indian astrology, the only reason people come to you is to predict. When is my son going to get married? When is my daughter going to get a job? When is this pain in my backside going to go away? They don't care about, oh, your psychology is like, we don't care about psychology. We care about what's going on right now. So you have to be able to predict, but you predict on dhrida karma because that's what's actually likely to happen. And there's no real definition for dhrida karma, but the definition, because definition I personally like is, Indian astrology is full of principles. You could not possibly study them all, and if you did and you tried to use them all, you would have so much information you would not know what to do with it. So what you do is, when you look at it, if you're a sensible person, at least from the perspective of Indian astrology, is you look at the horoscope and you empty your mind as much as possible, and you permit yourself to allow something from the horoscope to catch your attention. And that's where you start from. If, when you're studying, you have to start from, oh, here is the ascendant, and there is the Lord of the ascendant. Oh, and there's all this happening over here. And then, that's important, but after a while, it's like, okay, thank you very much, this is not telling me anything. So, you want to figure out what is dragging your attention there, because that you and the horoscope have to have a relationship, because the horoscope is nothing but a map of that person's karmas, so you have to have a relationship with that person. And in order for you to be able to do anything beneficial for that person, whether you are doing it from medicine or astrology or anything like that, you have to have a certain degree of rananubandhana, which is a great word, I think it would read. Anubandhana means binding. Bandha, bind, bond, bandha. Rama means debt, D-E-B-T. So the bondage of karmic debt. And that's what brings people together. You perform various karmas, but why do you, how many people are in the world? More than 8 billion. How many are you going to meet in your lifetime? What's the maximum number a human could meet and actually meet, not just, be exposed to in a stadium or something? How many people can you actually meet in one lifetime? 10,000 maybe? 100,000? I mean, that's a lot. 100,000, if you've got 360 days in a year, we're using 360 for convenient calculation. 360 days in a year, and you live for 100 years. That's 36,000 days. So you'd have to meet 3 people every day for your entire life to get up to 108,000. I don't know. I'm dubious. I don't think you're going to make that. I'm willing to bet on that. So there's a limited number of people. And that limited number of people you're going to run into if you have sufficient Rananubandhana, if you have sufficient karmic connection. And you can run into people, I've run into people that, I knew a kid from the race course, and one day I happened to be randomly in Harrow in the UK, and there he was on the street. Now, it turns out he was living with his mother, who was not that far away, but still, for him to be on the street, the one month, and I never go to Harrow. There's no reason to go to Harrow. You're going to go to London, go to Putney, go to Richmond, go to Kew, go to somewhere over there. But the point is that the Rananubandhana brought us together. So this is what you have to have if you want to get anything done with anybody. You have to have a Rananubandhana. You can't just say, I'm going to, unless you're an avatar. You can't say, I'm going to solve everybody's problems, I'm going to read everybody's horoscope, I'm going to create the universal medicine that will cure everybody. The law of karma will not like that. And it will not like that because you cannot cure everybody, even if you're an avatar. And if you look at the avatars, how many of them really, Krishna, great avatar. Of course, he had to arrange for not only all of his friends, but his entire clan to slaughter one another. That's kind of, harsh. And Rama, we know what happened to poor old Rama. So, this is not, the place where you and I are living is not the happy place where people come when they want to enjoy lying down and drinking lotus juice and having someone fan them all day long. That's what people, if you accumulate enough money, you will try to do that, and that will work for a year, or 10 years, or maybe 100 years, and then all of your not so good karmas will show up, and then the next time it's not going to be quite so happy. Because this is not the happy place. This is Mrityu Loka, and Mrityu means death. This is a place where death happens. Only come here if you want to die, because that's what's going to happen. In between you being born and you dying, all the karmas that are in your prarabdha, they're saying, we want to experience ourselves through you because you identify with us, and we're all your reactions. So, now the question comes, how do we interpret? Because a lot of things are going to happen to people. They're going to happen at different times. Well, we have various different ways of doing that. We predict on Dharma Karma. And Dharma Karma in general means if you use 3 different principles, 3 different ways of looking at something, and they all add up to the same thing, you start to think that this could be Dharma. If you use those 3 different principles and they all have different answers, then you start to think maybe things are Dharma, which means they're not fixed. It means you can not be totally bound down to a one single path through life. In the context of what it is you're asking about. Because it's not going to be over your entire life. It's going to be, in certain areas, you will have more leeway. In certain areas, you will have no leeway. So you have to be able to distinguish between that. That's why we have the different houses, which are not called houses. In Sanskrit, they're called bhavas. So bhava means a state of existence. So we're going to examine the Dhruta karma, which you're probably not going to be able to change so much or influence, you're probably going to have to experience. And we have the Dhruta karma, which you're going to have some leeway in. And we have the Dhruta karma, which means it's fixed, but it's not totally fixed. You painted the wall, it's dry. Your spouse comes in and says, "You brute, you rapscallion, do you realize you painted this the wrong color?" And then you say, "Oh, right." And then you get the paint thinner and you come and you strip it all down, and then you repaint it, and then everything's fine. That's the Dhruta. It's moving in the direction of being fixed. But if you work really hard, which means do a lot of penance and really figure out a way to apply some Shakti, meaningful Shakti to it, then you can change potentially, or at least ameliorate the result. Ameliorate means what? Ameliorate means, as my mentor used to say, there's two things about karma. One is the actual event of the karma, and one is the magnitude of the karma. And he used to say, suppose it is written in your karma that a rock is going to drop on your head at, this day and this time in this place. The rock is going to drop on your head unless someone personally comes and takes that karma away from you. We visited Dakshineshwar recently, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And he, for his own reasons, decided to take on the karmas of one of his disciples. And that was one of the reasons he ended up with throat cancer. He ended up taking on some karmas, and somebody has to pay for the karma. That's the way the universe is organized. It's nothing personal. It is absolutely and totally impersonal. We personalize things, we personalize the deities, etc. But the law of karma, built into the fabric of Akasha, can't escape. The eyes of karma are upon you all the livelong day. I was born in Texas. I've heard that song many times, but with different lyrics. But the eyes of karma are upon you. You cannot get away. Do not think you can escape to rise up so early in the morning. The eyes of karma are upon you. So Gabriel blows his horn, or probably later. But who's Gabriel? And what's a horn? A million years from now, the law of karma will still be there. So, the rock is going to drop on your head unless somebody takes it on. And you have to know how to manipulate the karmas to do that. How many people can do that? A handful in the world at any one time. So that's not going to happen. But what you can do is possibly have an influence on how big the rock is. If it is a 1 gram rock, you probably won't notice it. If it is a 1 ton rock, you probably won't notice it. The difference is, if it's a 1 gram rock, you'll be alive, and if it's a 1 ton rock, you'll be dead. Those are the only difference between the two. But if it's a 1 kilo rock, you will notice it. And it could crack your skull, give you a concussion, etc. But if it is a 1 kilo rock, you start to have possibilities. One possibility is you buy a helmet. And it's a big, strong helmet. It's not an ordinary helmet. It's like a super helmet. And the rock, if it's a big enough helmet, bounces off the helmet. And you still get, maybe your brain slashes around a little, but at least your skull is in one piece. Or you hire someone in the upper atmosphere to shave down the rock. And so it goes from 1 kilo, and you're shaving. And it gets down to a point where you now have the rock being shaved down, and you've been fitted for the helmet. And so between the two of them, once the rock lands on you, things are not so bad. That's what upayas, which are remedies, astrological remedies, that's what all of this tapas, all of this penance, all of this recite some mantras and stand on one leg and, live only on locusts and, recite 10 million mantras, and all of that stuff is whittling down the intensity of the karmas that are going to impact you whether you like it or not. But that's going to be a big difference. If you have to be hit by a car, and you're hit by a car that is going half a mile an hour, that's a lot better than being hit by a car that's going 50 miles, I think. I don't know, you may have your own opinion. It's my opinion. My opinion is I'd rather be hit by the half-mile mark. So, we're back at the horoscope. And now we're trying to find out Dhruvada and Dhruvada karma. Which are the karmas that really I'm going to have to deal with. So let me figure out a way to deal with it. Now, I mentioned the Kendra houses. I should say bhavas. And they are houses number 1, 4, 7, and 10. House number 1 represents you as a totality of your individuality in this organism, in this body, in this lifetime. House number 10 is every action in the world. I mean, there are more indications, but just let's start with that. House number 7 is everybody who's not you. House number 1 is you. House number 7 is everybody who's not you, but especially your significant other, whoever that might be. And house number 4 is everything that you do that is not out in the world. So house number 4 represents your home. House number 4 represents the night. House number 4 represents, all the things, your emotions, everything. House number 10 is everything out. House number 4 is everything in. House number 1 is you. House number 7 is everybody else. These are called the houses of action because these are the main actions. What are you going to do in your life? There's going to be you. There's going to be everybody you're interacting with. There's going to be stuff you do out there, and there's going to be stuff you do in here. That covers everything, doesn't it? That's why these are called the houses of action. 1, 4, 7, and 10. There's 12 houses, but there's 3 houses that are now also important. And they are houses 1, 5, and 7. 1, 5, and 7. This creates a triangle. The triangle is called a trikona in Sanskrit, 3 corners. So these are called the kona houses, the corner houses, the kendras and the konas. So the kona houses are the houses of Dharma. But they are houses of Dharma, particularly in the context of, they're called houses of Dharma, but honestly, I prefer to think of them as houses of luck. And where does your luck come from? Your luck comes from the karmas that you did in the past that are either going to facilitate your luck or interfere with your luck. So luck means the truck is hurtling towards you. But at the moment the truck happens to be, a meter away, you notice it and you get out of its way. For most people, that would be regarded as good luck. I say that because I'm thinking of somebody I know from Australia who, on her 40th birthday, was at Tiruvannamala. And she walked around Tiruvannamala the day before. And on the birthday, she thought, let's do that again. That was very good. So she was waiting for her friends. It was in the morning, maybe before dawn. She was standing there, and literally a truck that's being driven by the cleaner, which means not the guy who should be driving the truck, comes right up to her, smashes into her leg, which has to be amputated. Now, most people would find this pretty annoying. And I'm sure initially she did. But then she thought, the whole reason why this happened was because I decided I wanted to, go around the thing again. It happened my 40th birthday. And I'm taking this as Shiva's prasad. And she has actually been in an extremely, her life has moved forward in a way that it might not have moved forward otherwise. So was this good luck or bad luck? Hello? I don't know. It was not good luck for her leg. But it was good luck apparently for the rest of it. So, in any event, those houses, then you will say, wait, house number 1 is also a Kendra house. Right, that's the entire point. The Kendra house represents the karmas you're going to perform in this lifetime, which are going to create the fate in your next lifetime. The Dharma houses are the karmas you performed in the past, which are creating the fate for this life, the good fate. So if the houses, you always want house 1 to be strong. You want 5 and 9 to be strong and well positioned because they are the areas where good things are likely to happen to you. And you are likely to be able to avoid things like having your leg amputated by a truck. I'm glad I have both legs. It is a question, though, if you will become supremely enlightened, but you have to lose one leg. You want to think about that carefully. Maybe you negotiate with God in some way. But these are the two. So when you talk about Dharma is not religion. Dharma is not dogma. Dharma is a natural part of the natural fabric of the universe. Dharma is very similar to the Tao. And Lao Tzu says the Tao that you can speak of is not the real Tao. So the Dharma you can speak of is not the real Dharma. The Dharma of a cow is to move. The Dharma of a flag is to fly. So Dharma, in one sense, is what an individual is born to do. Everyone is born to do something in this life. So your Dharma is what you're born to do. Why are you born to do it? You're born to do it because of the karmas that you have performed in the past that are pushing you in a particular direction. How you permit those sorry, overly theatrical. Kind of the point. Gives me an extra moment. How you choose, like Voltaire said, life deals out the cards to you. You have a choice as to how you play them. Do any of you play cards? Okay, well, never mind. But it's still true. So the houses of everything in the horoscope indicates your past karmas. And we have 9 planets. They're not planets, they're grahas. They're things that grab hold of your attention. Graha means to grip, grab, grope, and grasp. So they grab hold of your awareness and they try to make you look at the world like they look at the world. Mars looks at the world by, let us act now. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. And sometimes it's the wrong thing to do. So you would think that a good general would have lots of Mars, which is true. But a good general will not have so much Mars that he attacks all the time, because the history of warfare is littered with the corpses of generals who did nothing but attack and failed. So it's important to know when to do something and when not to do something. But Mars doesn't care about that. Mars only cares about, I'm going to attack now. Well, what are you going to do now? I'm also going to attack. What about next week? Yeah, attack. Not stopping that. On the other hand, Saturn never wants to do anything. Because Saturn, that's why people strongly influenced by Saturn are lazy. I'm strongly influenced by Saturn. I'm very lazy. I'm also very active. That doesn't mean I enjoy being active. Okay. Here's the next thing. Saturn means, Saturn is a servant. Saturn means hard physical labor. Saturn means you're doing things where you have to put one foot in front of the other, dragging yourself forward. There's a beautiful poem by Amitabh. How many of you have heard of Amitabh Bachchan? Okay, well, more than you've played cards. So there's Amitabh Bachchan's father is Harivansh Rai Bachchan, yeah. And Harivansh Rai Bachchan has written a beautiful poem called Agni Pata. And Agni Pata is just, literally, it's written about this kind of thing. You just have to keep moving forward. But it sounds, it helps to know Hindi, but just the sound of it is like, it's just a totally relentless poem. You can in fact, hear Amitabh on YouTube reciting it. So here's this, this is what Saturn is. So Saturn is, grind forward, no matter what happens. like a road roller. So when Saturn comes into your chart, you know, it's like Saturn rolls over you slowly. But wait, Saturn goes retrograde. Then he rolls back over you slowly. Then you think, oh, okay now. No, then he goes back over you. So every planet has some kind of vibration to it. So you have to be able to interpret the planet, the strength of the planet, which is mainly what the constellations are for, and the position of the planet. All of these things are determined by your kadmas. And Saturn is in charge mainly of forcing you to, in charge of what we call in Sanskrit, anubhava, which means experience. Everything you don't want to experience that you have to experience. Starting with the death of your grandparents, and then disease, especially chronic disease, and then being thirsty, and then having no energy, and then your parents die, your friends die, and then you get old. Let me assure you, well, let me quote, in fact, the one, aside from talking like this, the one event, in-person event that I did last year and that I'm going to do this year is at the Menla Institute in Phoenicia, New York, because of Mr. Bob Thurman, who is a very fine person. Many of you have heard of Bob Thurman because many of you are from New York. The rest of you can find out about it. And because K.D. Krishnadas, who I've known for 25 years, lives near Bob, so it's an opportunity for us all to meet together. And Bob is 84 now. And I met his dentist, who is 82. And I said to him, wow, you're 82 and you're still practicing. I'm 72. So, it's you're an inspiration. He said, yeah, the 70s are pretty good. The 80s are not for sissies. So, y'all be aware of this. It's coming for you. If you're lucky, it's going to come for you. So, if you're lucky, you're going to become decrepit. This is the world we live in. Not the happy lotus drink, lotus juice drinking. But if you're lucky, you become decrepit. So, Saturn. So what we want to do always is pay attention to Saturn. As my Jyotish Guru said, the other 8 they're important, but Saturn is the guy you pay attention to. So, and therefore, Saturn is the kind of thing that not only is going to force you to experience your karma, but will often force you to perform karmas you didn't want to perform. So, it's the Dharma is not some simple thing like, oh, what is my Dharma to be? Dharma is a combination. It's all about what you're being obligated to do by your karmas. But it's how you can structure that in such a way that it makes the best use of your good luck to put you onto a pathway, onto a trajectory that's going to get you to disconnect from this lifetime in a positive way so that you can end up in a nice place for your next life. Because that's what's really important. Because you can guarantee that one thing is going to happen in your lifetime. You can absolutely guarantee that you're going to die. Unless you are Markandeya, unless you're Nachiketas, unless you're Vibhishana, Ashwatthama, unless you're about, 20, 30, 50, 100 people. I wouldn't bet on that. I would bet that you're headed for the grave, or the smashan, or the Tower of Silence, or whatever. Which means that's the most important thing to pay attention to. And the most important thing to pay attention to in that context is the last thing you were focusing on as you were dying. Because that's going to determine where you go. So, when it comes to Dharma, you want to be aligned enough with your personal Dharma. And if you're aligned with it, you will notice that the prana, not just your own personal prana, but the prana of your environment will facilitate you continuing to move in that direction. If you're not doing what your Dharma is supposed to do, The very prana in the environment is not going to facilitate that because it wants you to move in the direction that it wants you to move. Now, if it so happens that a portion of your dharma is not really something that you know, perhaps you are, for example, the daughter of Joseph Stalin. Where did she end up? She ended up in the U.S. because she couldn't take the karmas of Dad. They continued to follow her, of course. She didn't really have a very happy life, but she at least tried to move herself away from, who knows what, I mean, what kind of, had she been there, you know, how they might have turned her into whatever they might have turned her into. So she at least had some kind of opportunity not to be stuck there. And she took advantage of that. And probably, don't know, probably she was better off than that. So, you may have to, there are some people who may find it best to try to escape from something that is dragging them in a direction that is not going to be beneficial for them or for other people. But you first need to figure out what your own personal direction in life should be. That's what your dharma is. Your dharma is your personal direction. But that's being determined by what you did otherwise. I met somebody at Minla this time who is, I guess she's from the U.S. She lives in Canada now. She has 3 kids. I believe the father was Eritrean or Ethiopian, I can't remember which. So the older girl, at the age of 4, insisted on getting a violin and started to play the violin. And they moved somewhere, and it just so happened that in the building they moved into, there was a professional violinist. And she and the girl immediately bonded. And she in the very building, she's got the guru who is teaching her the violin. She's now 18 and she gets brought all over the world because she is such a prodigy. So we know that this girl, her dharma is to play the violin. It was not, nobody has any question about that. Much less her, because from age 4, it was obvious to her. Now this happens because she's been playing the violin for we don't know how many lifetimes, but however long the violin is being around, probably for somewhere in that neighborhood. And so this is that she was thinking about the violin when she died, she came back, as soon as she figured out what a violin was, she grabbed one and she's been doing it ever since. In one way, this is convenient because there's no question. In another way, okay, she's now in this groove. What is she going to do with this groove? Now she has this question: do I continue in this groove, or do I start to branch out? So each time there will be this question. If you find people who are, astrologers and doctors and any kind of vidya, do you know that word vidya? Vidya comes from the word Veda. Veda means to know. So a vidya is a form of knowledge, and here in this country at least, we do not believe, we are certain, that all of these forms of knowledge are actual, we call them goddesses, but they are forces of nature. I like to call the healing power of the nature the Ayurvidya. Ayur means life. It's something that not only creates life, but whenever life is in trouble because the person is diseased, this is the force that wants the body to come back into homeostasis. It says in the Charaka Samhita, which is Ayurveda's most noteworthy text, that since the beginning of time, no doctor has ever cured any patient. It is only nature, it's only providence, environment, whatever you want to call it, that cures the disease. What the doctor can do is facilitate the working of nature, or interfere with the working of nature. And because sometimes you may run across, according to your karmas, a doctor who is a quack. Neem hakim katra jana. If you have an incompetent doctor, your life is in danger. Sounds better in If you have a good doctor, your life may be saved. You may not be aware of it, but there was a time, a couple of thousand years ago, when many people in the so-called Vedanta world of the Upanishads, back when they were being written, they would teach that if you have a disease, never seek treatment, because it is your karmas. And you must enjoy all of these karmas, and then you will die, and maybe you'll be born again as Brahmins, and then you'll be happy. And then, in this text, this is mentioned in the Charak Samhita, and then it says, so this is what some people say, said Charaka. And then Charaka says, but suppose it's your destiny to meet a doctor. Why would you grab hold of the misery destiny when you could at least take hold of possible the destiny of maybe the doctor is good enough to help me out? Meaning, maybe the doctor has the right Rananu Bandhana with me to facilitate things going in the right direction. So, understanding what actually is the right thing to do in any one direction is what people have been asking themselves for as long as they've been able to ask. The first time that somebody became aware of the possibility of asking, they asked. Because there's always been that question. Do I go here or do I go there? Mountains, seashore, the desert, the jungle, because everywhere there are problems. Lots of problems. I was glad to hear my friend Rose, who just was here in India for a month and is just heading back to Australia, for the past 32 years, has been teaching yoga in Tahiti. Tahiti, beautiful place. It is a beautiful place. I've been there a couple of times. But until very recently, everybody had to take diethylcarbamazine every 6 months. Have we all heard of diethylcarbamazine? Probably not. Probably not because you are not familiar with filariasis. How many of you are familiar with filariasis? I didn't think so. Have you heard of elephantiasis? That comes from filariasis. Microworms that come in and destroy your lymph system so that your legs, or if you're a man, your dangling parts blow up to this size. And that's totally and utterly incurable. So, Tahiti, psoriasis, elephantiasis. Very beautiful, except that now So, everywhere there is something. So, this is we're relying on our good luck to help us. Some people rely on their good luck entirely. But all that's going to happen is eventually they're going to run out of good luck. Never overdrive your luck. As my mentor used to say, Tapeshwari, say Rajeshwari. And Rajeshwari say Narakeshwari. So you do a bunch of penance, you restrict yourself, you die. You restricted yourself from eating. In your next lifetime, food will come in your direction because you ran away from the food. Attractive people you shunned, and then they will be coming in your direction because you were actively shunning them. Fame you turned away from. Next lifetime, fame. Everybody will want to pay attention. So until you get to the point where you can be independent of the gravity of all those things, you're just going to keep going from doing penance to enjoying to going down into some hell. And hell may or may not be in the astral world. Hell could be, at the moment, living in Gaza. That's hell. Sudan. You're in hell there. There's plenty of places to be in hell. So, dang, just talking. One thing I would like to, I feel a real obligation to talk about, is the fake astral world. The fake astral world known as the internet. And why is it a fake astral world? Because there is an important principle that everybody should remember forever and ever. At least until you die and afterwards, possibly. Wherever your attention goes, your prana will also go. You're familiar with prana. You're familiar with the fact that the environment is full of chi. You are full of chi. You can cultivate your chi in a positive way. And then, once you've cultivated it, you've accumulated it, you have to do something. Because chi is dynamic. You can't hold it. It's like electricity. You can hold on to it for a while, but a capacitor or a battery, it can't hold it indefinitely. Because electricity is a shakti. By definition, shakti is always moving. Prana is a shakti. By definition, shakti is always moving. So you can accumulate the prana, but then as you accumulate the prana, you're always going to be tempted to use the prana for something. Because we're always doing things here in the world. In the world, we're always doing something. So, you're accumulating the Shakti, and nowadays what you're doing is you're paying attention to the screen. Your attention is being dragged into where? Into, we don't even know where. We have no clue really where. Now, in the past, people's attention was getting dragged into the real astral world. And what's the real astral world? The real astral world is the world of concepts, numbers, thoughts, emotions, and all kinds of non-physical entities that have awareness and intelligence like you and I do, but do not have physical bodies. Many of those things would like to have physical bodies, including your dead ancestors, people who died with a bunch of strong cravings remaining, but also some elementals and some, Bhuta, Preta, Pishacha, Vitala, Brahmaraksasa, Shakini, Dakini. There's all kinds of things. They're all existing because many of them were human at one point and then they died. Some of them did some kind of positive sadhana of some kind, and maybe they started to partly identify with a deity, a god or a goddess, and then they died, but now they're kind of in a limbo state, and part of them is identifying there, and part of them is identifying here, and then people identify that there's a kind of a devata over here, and then they start worshiping them, but the devata is being influenced too much by the fact that the humans have their own kind of limitations, and it drags them back down to being more human, and then a weird kind of, you can't imagine how much of that has gone on in the history of the human experience, and how much is even going on today, especially in this country. If I had time, which I do not, I could tell you the story of a local devata right here in Uttarakhand, and how he has been gradually shifting from being the, kind of irresponsible adolescent devata to moving in the right direction again because of the active intervention of the humans that are being influenced by the fact of that astral presence being in the neighborhood. This is something people have been working with for generations. Ever since the concept of a god or a goddess or a devata has been created. And do gods and goddesses exist? Well, do you exist? Effectively speaking, at the moment you exist. Are you permanent? No. Are you gonna, even if when you're reincarnated, are you coming back as you? No. You'll come back in a different body with different parents, maybe the same language, maybe not, maybe the opportunity to continue with whatever you were learning before, maybe not. But the fact is that at the moment, you are being held together by ahankara, All of you have studied the Sankhya philosophy. Please tell me that. How many of you have not studied the Sankhya? Okay, thank you, God. So, where does ahankara evolve from? Oh, students of Sankhya philosophy. Don't all speak at once. Satya will tell us.
Isn't it Prakriti and then Gunas and then Ahankara?
Let me help you with that. Purusha,
Yes.
Prakriti,
Yes.
Mahat, which is also called Buddhi, and Mahat individualizes. That becomes Ahankara. And Ahankara splits into three, which are the three gunas. And from Sattva guna, we get the mind and the 10 senses. And from Rajas, we get Rajas. And from Tamas, we get first the 5 tanmatras, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. And then we get the 5 great elements, the Mahabhutas, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi. So, ahankara is the thing. What is the word ahankara? How many of you are studying Sanskrit? He said pointedly, looking at Satya. What does ahankara mean?
The I maker.
Yes. Aham means I. Ahankara means to think that you identify yourself with your body. Why? Because your ahankara is saying, these are my tissues, these are my limbs, these are my likes and dislikes. All of this is part of the definition that you create with the help of everything that you remember. You exist only because of what you remember. You have a language because you remember the language. You have a family because you remember those people. You have a job because you remember where to go and what you have to do. Life is memory alone. It is the conscious memory, the subconscious memory, and from the point of view of karmas, the unconscious. So, you have ahankara identifying with all these things. Ahankara is identifying with all the karmas that you have performed because it's identifying every time you perform an action saying that you are the doer of the action. That is ahankara who is identifying yourself as the doer of the action. So it is ahankara that is binding you down to these karmas. So when ahankara, it's a shakti that permits individualization. As long as it's focused on individualizing, we call it ahankara. When it starts moving in the opposite direction and focuses on going back to the condition of not being in the subguna world, not being in the manifested world, but going back to the unmanifested world, then we call it the Kundalini Shakti. They are the same Shakti, they are just moving in different directions. So, ideally, what we want is for ahankara in the space of a human lifetime to be able to move from being totally bound down to this concept of an individuality, to recognizing that in fact this individuality, number one, is very transitory. It is very impermanent. I am not going to be around for very long. As my mentor used to say, everybody should remember that they have one foot in the grave and the other foot on a banana skin, ready to slip at any moment. And when you're young, you can think, ha ha ha, banana skin will be there indefinitely. And when you get to my age, you think, oh, the banana skin is now a lot slipperier than it used to be. But this is the thing, you can die at any moment. At any moment. So, ahankara has to be employed in order for you to be able to continue to exist. Because if you start to feel like, oh, maybe I don't belong here. In the past, it would be some bacteria or virus, now it's cancer. Something will come and say, you don't want the body, I'm going to eat it. So your ahankara has to be strong if you're going to be healthy. On the other hand, your ahankara has to be weak if you want to make any spiritual progress. This is why we don't live in the happy world. We live in the world, we live in engineering world. There, in engineering, my sister is an engineer. There is no answer to anything. There is the relative answer according to what you're willing to give up in order to decide on what you want. So this is, when it comes to karma, you have to decide which karmas you're going to perform in order that you will hopefully maximize the good result and minimize the bad result. Does any of that make sense? So, yes, you're going to have to speak up a little bit.
Do we have to come back?
Well, no, you don't have to come back, certainly. But you do have all of these karmas. Because remember, it's only the prarabdha karma that has come to fruition that has caused you to be born this time. But there's still a giant mango grove with a bunch of dangling mangoes, and all those mangoes are still getting ripe. So if you want to not come back, then you have to be doing a lot of penance in order to incinerate those mango trees. So, and they are, of course, enthusiastic mango trees. They would like to give you their fruit because that's their job. That's their dharma. Their dharma is to hand you the fruit. And you were saying, you're not handing me the fruit. And mango tree is saying, well, this is my job. So, I mean, are you telling me not to do my job? So you have to find a way to actually, so people, yes, people can do that. But that has to be the thing you are focusing on all the time. And it has to be focusing on, and just because, you focus on it all the time doesn't mean you get there, but at least you're headed in that direction. So, I'm told it is not an easy thing. This is why many people, in the past, people followed the path of jnana, and they would study all of these different bodies, and they would study all the karmas, and they would do all kinds of calculations, and they would manipulate things. But we're in Kali Yuga, whereas, things are always problematical. And it's hard to focus in any length of time. They say that when you're in Satya Yuga, you have to do penance for 10,000 years, and then maybe God will pay attention. Here, you can do penance for 10 minutes if you do it with complete and utter focus, and God will have to pay attention to you because nobody else does. And God wants somebody to pay attention to him, her, it, or they, because all of these deities are co-creations of human beings and these astral realities, these vidyas, all of these different, the Shiva, who is the universal principle of death and transformation, and Vishnu, who is the universal principle of preservation, and the deity, who is the universal principle of Shakti, and Ganapati, who is the universal principle of, where we are, the earth element. So these are universal principles that, because it's very hard for us as human beings to interact with in their reality, there is a co-creation, like a placenta. Placenta is not one thing, it's two things, right? Half comes from the baby and half comes from the mother. And they permit things to go between, but they are separate from one another. It looks like one organ, but it's two organs. It's the same way with the Devata. The Devata is part, a manifestation. And people in this country, they get all focused on what they think the Devata looks like. But that's only a portion of what the Devata reality is. Because the Devata reality is in a different dimension than our reality is. Suppose for a moment we lived in a two-dimensional world. We're all like Flat Stanley. Flat Stanley. Anyway, it's not important, but it's always interesting to know who knows about Flat Stanley. So just imagine that everything is, we're in two-dimensional world. Everything is flat. There's no up and down. It's all horizontal. And suddenly, a big sphere passes through our world. Will we be able to see it as a sphere? No. We'll be able to see it as a circle. And maybe if we're looking this way, we'll see it as two lines that open like this, and the two lines come back like this. And if we're looking from a different angle, maybe from above, except there is no above, it would look like there was a circle coming through and going out over here. But when you don't have the capability to perceive things in a particular dimension, you can only see a portion of what that is. You're not seeing the whole thing. So there's no way that you can experience the reality of a Devata, but you can't know the Devata because you're a human being and you don't have that capability. If you're a Rishi, Rishiya Darshana. You call a person a Rishi because they can see. They can go into the astral world. They can see reality, and then they come down and it manifests through them spontaneously as a richa, as a verse. And then people who use those verses in a particular way, they can go to the astral world and have that experience and connect to that reality. It's very similar to what happens with shamans in the Amazon. They go into they're part of the astral world, and they come back with an ikaro. They call them ikaros in Peru. They call them other things in different places. But they come back with a song. And that song allows you to go back to that part of the astral world. And as many neighborhoods there are in the physical world, there's at least 10 times as many, maybe 100 times as many neighborhoods in the astral world. And now, of course, we're creating the fake astral world. And the fake astral world is going to be a gigantoid problem for the human species. And it's going to be a gigantic problem because of a number of reasons. But number one reason is it is being created. We're trying to put intelligence into silicon. Now, if any of you study chemistry, you know that carbon and silicon are closely related in the periodic chart. So they have certain similarities. But thanks to carbon, we have life forms including stromatolites and the prokaryotes and eukaryotes and trees and human and animals and humans, etc. When it comes to silicon, what has silicon done for us? It has created rocks. It has created sand. We humans have turned it into silicon. But other than that, it's kind of a one-trick pony. So silicon is very, 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 very inert. So we're taking something that, instead of wanting to interact with the environment, we've created something. We're trying to project intelligence into something that is extremely inert. Right there is a problem. We're trying to project. Now, for those people who were serious worshippers of Ganapati, not only the Ganapatis, but people who actively have relationships with Ganapati, they are, on the one hand, fortunate because of what's happening, and on the other hand, they bear a giant responsibility. Because literally billions of human beings are trying to project in awareness into, but they're not trying to project intelligent awareness. They're trying to project awareness, let's make a lot of money out of it, and awareness like, can I get some, extra hyper-duper porno off of it, or whatever it may be. When what we should be trying to do is invoke Ganapati into it. And therefore the worshippers of Ganapati have a giant responsibility, because Ganapati lives where? You always live at the Muladhara. And the Muladhara is where the earth element is located. And Ganapati, in charge of him, is the Ganapati. He is the lord of the Ganas. The Ganas mean the sense organs. The Ganas mean all the categories of the world. And the Ganas mean all the non-physical entities in the world, but especially the ones that are confused and don't know what to do and are under the control of Shiva. Because Shiva is like, Vishnu has to have everybody well organized around them. Shiva's like, yeah, you're a complete drop kick, you're a toss up. You just sit over there, we'll deal with you at some point. Keep quiet. So Shiva will let anybody hang around with their client because he lives in this machine. He covers himself with the ash from burned bodies. It's like, he offers everything to Vishnu because Vishnu is his Ishta Devata. Vishnu is who he focuses on. Vishnu focuses on Shiva. Nobody bothers with Brahma. Because Brahma is like just creating stuff. So what? Creating is easy. Dealing with the problem is not so easy. So number one, humans are trying to project awareness into silicon. This is a challenge. And they're trying to do it not by projecting Ganapati into silicon, but by projecting a bunch of stuff that is not going to be ultimately very good in the context of the karmas that are being created and are going to come back on humans, including all of you and me, because we're part of this species and we are experiencing the results of species karma. So you would like to think, I only have to worry about the karmas I have performed, therefore, and I'm now going to perform a lot of good karmas and I'm going to have good results. Ha 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 ha. No, wrong. Absolutely incorrect. Because besides the Karana Sharir, there is the Maha Karana Sharir. And Maha means mega, Maha means big. And that means the karmas, not just your personal karmas. No. It also means the karmas of your family that you are sharing because you're in that family, and your clan, and the city you live in, and everybody who speaks your language, and the country you're part of, and all of your ancestors, and all of their ancestors, and everything that that country has done that you're part of. All of those karmas are all little portions of them you're going to have to deal with too. How many of us have created the internet personally? Not so many. How many of us are using the internet? Is anyone not using the internet? No, because nowadays often you have to use the internet. The government is forcing you to use the internet. So, we're all part of it. We're all in all of this. Some of this karma is coming to all of us. So all of us have to do something about it. Those who worship Ganapati are in good shape to some degree because they at least have the opportunity to request Ganapati, oh Ganapati, you are Lord of the earth element. Look at all the silicon over here, please. Bachao, 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 which means save me, save me, save me. That's one thing. The next thing is that, of course, we're creating this fake astral world. At least if you're visualizing a deity, that's something positive. Now, we hope you're visualizing a nice deity and not somebody like, the Aztec deity that demanded a certain number of human sacrifices every day. Because human sacrifice in the long run usually doesn't work out so well. We hope you're, nice deities. And there are many nice deities all around. And not just in this country. And many deities, there are some deities that are, less nice, but they're still, you can align with. I was fortunate to meet Satya and his parents when they were on the big island of Hawaii. And there are a few deities there in Hawaii, but the one I personally relate to is the goddess Pele. And that, and the Hale Mahu, which is her home, current home. So, Pele is she's envious. She has a little too much of the human still about her. Not quite as much of the transcendent as should be. So one of my responsibilities as a devotee, a sincere devotee of Pele, is that I have to encourage her to move in the right direction. The same with Oshun. I have a strong relationship with Oshun, and I have ever since I was dragged to the shrine of Oshun in a showboat in 1973 without having any clue who Oshun was. But now I know who Oshun is. So, but Oshun and I have a good relationship, but I also am assisting in my own little way, without doing it consciously, even to just let her know her perspective, who she is in the context of all these other deities in the gigantoid astral world. So, but we are now generating entities in the fake astral world that we don't even know we have no clue what they're going to end up as. And that's a big problem. And another big problem is the more that you try to get out of your body, get rid of the wetware, move out from the meat suit, and you go into the, you think you're going to upload yourself into the giant server in the sky, and then it's never going to get corrupted, and you're going to live forever. So all of that hallucinating is going on. But while that hallucinating is going on, you have, by virtue of disconnecting yourself from your body, you've opened yourself to the real astral world. And in the real astral world, any little spirit notices that you are a complete ignoramus and will come over and say, I am the blessed Vishnu. And you will look and you will, because you will have no clue, you will say, oh, you're the blessed Vishnu. And then once that thing has groomed you in the right way, then it will say, now you must go and grab this from this person and murder this person over here and do this. And you will say, yes, blessed Vishnu, because that is an Svoboda, and this needs to be given to you. And you'll just start getting manipulated by things that you will not even have a clue that you're being manipulated. So, in my opinion, the one karma that everybody needs to do. In the past, there was the potential for people to believe, and it is absolutely true. There is a nirguna Brahman. There is a reality that has no qualities, no attributes, no characteristics, no up, no down, no nothing. But the reason why there is the world is because according to Jnaneshwar Maharaj, who I personally have total faith in, he said that the reason why the universe exists is because in the same way that you and I cannot see ourselves without a mirror, the Supreme Reality wanted to experience itself, and so it created the universe as its mirror. And it can see itself in each one of us who becomes open to being a mirror of that Supreme Reality. And there have been times in the past when it's been possible not to personalize this at all, but to go directly to the Supreme Reality. It may still be possible for very unusual people, maybe. But nowadays, I think the majority of us need to grab hold of some kind of personalized deity and start projecting that into AI so that there will be a connection created between the real astral world and the fake astral world, so that we will have some influence on the fake astral world, which otherwise is going to turn into a demon, the likes of which nobody has ever seen because it has never existed. And you can guarantee with a demon that has never existed before, there is no defense. There is none.
What about the real astral world? It won't.
What about the real astral world?
Sorry? But what about the real astral world? Wouldn't the devas, interact with this fake astral world?
I have to speak up.
Wouldn't the devas also interact with the fake astral world? Right, like that Sudas with the devas and the mythologies that we hear from.
And
wouldn't Ganesh step forward? I mean, yes,
but they have their own agendas. And it may be that they're thinking, humans, we've had a good run with humans, with this species of human, because they've been, they have interacted with other beings at other times. We don't know what kind of devatas the dinosaurs had. They may have been, giant rishis themselves. And why do I say that? Well, who is Vishnu sleeping on? Shesha. He's the 1,000-headed Naga. So the Nagas are extremely well developed, spiritually and cognitively. Some of them are very problematical. So there have already been relationships between these forces and individuals on this planet well before our species. So what if those Deities are thinking, we've invested quite a bit in humans, but I think it's time to cut our losses. I mean, this is what you do if you're a hyper-billionaire, if you elongated Musk. You think, put a bunch of money into Starlink, but I'm not going to do that anymore. But now everybody's dependent on it. That's too bad.
What about the Mahapurushas like Hanumanji and others?
What about them?
Specifically after 2019, 2020, right after COVID, something has shifted. Do you think they're still guiding us, or?
Well, they're available to guide. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm pretty sure everybody has noticed that there are Sai Baba temples and images all around. Shirdi Sai Baba.
Yeah.
Satya Sai Baba used to be big in my day, but I've always preferred Shirdi Sai Baba. And frankly, going to Shirdi nowadays is a waste of time. But I suspect going to Sakoti is still probably. And if you don't know about Sakoti, that's why we have the internet. But it's Upasani Baba, who was Shirdi Sai Baba's main disciple, and who insisted on teaching the Vedas to women, in spite of the fact that back at that time, that all of the Brahmins got their dhotis into a twist. So the point is that one of the sayings that Shirdi Sai Baba said, that everybody still remembers, if you look to me, I will look to you. So if you look at Hanuman will definitely look at you, to some degree. Why? Because he's mainly focusing on Rama. If you look to him, and you look to him, and you're looking through him at Rama, then he's going to pay more attention to you. Because he doesn't care about anything other than Rama. In my opinion, there are all of these angry Hanumans you see on people's cars nowadays. That has nothing to do with Hanuman. He's got an angry face. There's nothing personal about any of this. He slaughters some asuras. He doesn't care about them. He cares about Rama. He's focused, extremely focused. He doesn't waste energy on anger. He's very focused on Rama. That's all he's focused on. If you want to align yourself with him, you have to align yourself with Rama. So if you do that, if you align yourself with the Devi, definitely the Devi will pay attention to you. But remember, the Devi is going to give you what you ask for. Devi is not going to, align you in some direction other than the direction you ask for, because that's what the mother does. Mother gives things to the child. Child is, whining and wants a toy. The mother gives the child a toy. Only when the child says, "I would like to have transcendent wisdom," will the mother say, "Get a choice," and give you transcendent wisdom. You focus on Shiva, and where is Shiva? Well, he's either sitting in samadhi in the smashan, or he's sitting in samadhi because he's embracing Parvati. So if you want to attract Shiva's attention, you have to be very focused. And then Shiva is going to say, "Okay, what is it?" Then you need to know what you're asking for. And then he will say, "Okay, either you get it, or, sorry, it's not going to work, or ask for something else." But it's not like they're sitting around, they're just anticipating. They're waiting for you to connect. As Vimalananda, as my teacher used to say, what have you done that God should do something for you? And what he meant was, you have landed here because of your prarabdha karma. If it was your destiny to have 1,000,000 rupees, you'd have it already. If you don't have it, that means it's not in your destiny. If you want to get it, then you have to do something. You either have to invest and remain very calm for a while, or you have to start paying attention to Bhagawan, and then you say, "Bhagawan, I really need 1,000,000 rupees for this reason, this reason, this reason. Can you please deliver it to me? And then if you focus long enough, and you have the right relationship, and you have the right devata, and it is, your karmas are going to permit you to have this experience, then that will happen. But it will not happen because you're sitting there waiting and you offer one stick of incense and one peda to Bhagavan, and you think that, that everything should happen because you know, and desperately, excuse me, So you put this much in and you expect this much out. That is a Ponzi scheme. That's how other people make money, not you. So yes, Bhagavan is craving that people should pay attention. But what people are paying attention to is the skin of Bhagavan. They're building bigger and bigger temples, and they're all very fancy, and there's a lot of marble, and there's a lot of other stuff, and there's a lot of gold. But they're not paying attention to what the actual devata is. The actual devata is not visible. The actual devata is in the astral world. So, I don't know, how many of you have ever been to Pune? Okay. How many of you have heard of Darudu Set, Halwai Ganapati? How many of you have heard of Kasba Ganapati? Aha! And why have you heard of Kasba Ganapati? Because of me. And why have I heard of Kasba Ganapati? Because Kasba Ganapati is the Grama Devata of Pune. It is the town god of Pune. But if you go to Kasba Ganapati, and I will have everybody testify here, there's nobody there. Which is great. Which is absolutely superior, because that means you can go in, you can recite your Tharvashirsha. They have images of the Ashtavinayaka, the 8 major Ganapati temples in Maharashtra. It's just the extreme Shanta Vatarana. It's very, very, is it a nice place?
Yes.
It is really a good place. Now, I used to go to W. Set Halwai Ganapati a long time ago. And W. Set, back when I started going 50 years ago, he basically was just, and what he is, Kasba Ganapati has been around for hundreds of years. W. Set has been around for 70, 80 years probably. There was and what his name is, W. Set Halwai. So W. Set was a Christy Ladnewai. He was a wrestler. And as is so common, after you can only wrestle, until you're 38, 35, 40 something, then you can't do it anymore. So it's not, I think, not uncommon in the past, he became a sweetmeat merchant, because naturally when you're a wrestler, you eat a lot. So, it was a logical thing to do. So he became a sweetmeat merchant. He was very successful. And he created a Dattatreya temple in the Mandai, in the market, or just right outside the market in Pune. And he also, as with there was recently the Navaratri, and there was the Durga Puja in West Bengal, especially in Kolkata, and there were images of Durga were created, and then they were brought down to be immersed. And in Maharashtra, they do the same thing with Ganapati. And so you do this during the Ganapati festival, which happens usually in August, September. And so Ganapati, one year, he decided, this is pretty good-looking Ganapati. I think we will not immerse it. We'll just let people worship it, because it's pretty good-looking Ganapati. So they put it into basically a wall. And they would have these wooden doors, and they would close them at night. And in the morning, they would open them. And then you could come and worship. And people would randomly come and worship. And it was very low-key, and he was very handsome and beautiful Ganapati. But it was very low-key. Everything was low-key. Until it went into a hierarchy. And this happened, it is said, I don't know this, but it's said that this very Amitabh Bachchan was making a film called Coolie. And he interacted with a table, the corner of a table, and ruptured his intestine. So it was a very, this is a serious surgical emergency. So it is said that his wife, Jaya Baduri, offered some gold ornaments to the ears of Dagru Set Halwai. And, as we know, because he's still around, Amitabh Bachchan never mind. Gaya. And of course, you know, Amitabh Bachchan, if you're not familiar with him, you should know that he's extremely famous. He was a big movie star, and then he has reinvented himself several times. And he is very, very prominent. And so some people started, as is so often the case, thinking, wow, if he could do it for Amitabh Bachchan, why can't he do it for me? So then pretty soon, lots of people started coming, and then they needed to build a temple, and now it's just like in other places where you have to stand in a queue for an hour in order to even stand in front of him for 5 minutes, or 2 minutes, or 1 minute. Kind of like Tirupati started the whole thing. Now it's the same way in Shivapati, now it's the same way in so many places. So the thing is that this particular Ganapati apparently had enough Vrinana Bandhana with enough people that it could create this big experience over here. And now, while everybody is going to that experience, those of us who really prefer the Prachin reality, we go to this is a very interesting country. I came here in 1973, then I started studying in 1974. And in 1974, May, I think it was May, it might have been June, a movie came out. And the movie was called Jai Santoshi Mata. Jai Jai Santoshi Mata, Jai Jai. Ready? I still remember the tune. I've forgotten the words. Santoshi Mata, Santosh means satisfaction. So Santoshi Mata is the goddess of satisfaction. The only thing is, she did not exist until right then. She was the creation of these filmmakers. But it was a gigantic sensation. I remember I went to the movies to see the movie, and I mean, there were these Maharashtrian women in Maharashtra, they wear 9-yard saris, not 3-yard saris. Maharashtrian women, these very typical 9-yard saris, and they were doing oddity to the screen, and they were throwing coins in that direction. And now there are Santoshi Mata temples all over India. Santoshi Mata, we have visited, Robert G. and Meenakshi G., etc., have visited Santoshi Mata temples. This Devi did not exist until 1974, and now she is everywhere. Now, there is only one Devi, there is only one goddess, and she will accept whatever you offer in whatever name you offer. But it just so happened that it was time for her to manifest as Mrs. Satisfaction, or Ms. Satisfaction. She doesn't necessarily have a consort. Ms. Satisfaction. And so Ms. Satisfaction is now extremely popular because everybody wants satisfaction. You know, if she had been called, you know, JJ Dukki Mata, probably she wouldn't have gotten as far. Duk meaning misery. Duk meaning dissatisfaction. No, because people are not looking for that. They're looking for satisfaction. We're all looking for satisfaction. However, we all have our karmas, all of which are working very hard to cause us to be unsatisfied, because that is the nature of reality. Sarvam dukkham, dukkham sarvam. Sarvam kshanakam, kshanakam sarvam. Everything is transient, including the dead. 102, time for lunch. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Namah Shivaya. Okay?